I want to start off by saying I called this way back in the first episode. The fact that Juliet and Solo were not alone in the silo. In the first episode, while Juliet was trying to cross over to IT, the first way she tried to do this was by swinging across with a rope, and someone cut her rope, and that's the first time she fell in the water. Now here we are in episode 7. While she's in the water again, someone cut her rope, but this time we learn a little bit more. The weapon that they used to cut her rope in the first episode and this episode was an axe, but more importantly, whoever it is wants Juliet dead. They tried to kill her in the first episode, and in this episode they tried to drown her. Not only did they try to drown her though, they finally got their hands on Solo. So the big question is, who is this person or who are these people? I think Solo knows exactly who these people are, because throughout this episode and pretty much throughout this entire season, Solo has been lying to Juliet. We've known this. His name isn't Solo. He's not the person that's supposed to be in the IT. We even saw it in this episode when he was begging Juliet to save his silo and he threw that mini tantrum. If you look closely at the camera, you can see Solo being manipulative and using those tactics to kind of guilt trip Juliet into helping him. Even though he already took her suit and she's already forced to help him, Solo is taking that extra step to be even more manipulative. And another thing I want to add, the fact that Solo already had diving goggles made for Juliet to go underwater means that he knew about the water pump being underwater and he knew that someone would have to go down there to do so. He just didn't know how to do it. This plan is something that Solo has had for a while because he knew all about breathing underwater, what's needed. He also knew about the fact that you can get the bends from diving too quickly. He was just too much of a coward to dive in the water himself. And now all of our theories about Solo start to add up. If we trace it back to a few episodes, the fact that he forgot the code to the vault door, I'm gonna keep harping on that because if Solo was the real Shadow to IT, he would know this like the back of his hand. This episode, we learned so much about IT and their shadows. Don't worry, we're gonna talk about Bernard and Lucas a little later because now that we finally know how many years they've been underground, it opens up a whole new possibility. So we're gonna dive into that a little later. But let's get back to Solo. Not only did he steal the identity of Solo, I'm gonna go back to that same classroom where all the different number combinations were written on the board. It shows that Solo was trying to get in there and he killed whoever was inside that silo. That's why he's so paranoid, because he knows what he did. He also knows that there potentially is other people in the silo, which is why he probably never ventured out until Juliet came. The fact that Juliet was now in silo 17 and she was walking around with no one bothering her, in Solo's head he probably thought, hey, if she's moving around and she hasn't seen anybody else, there might be no one else in this silo and now I'm gonna force her to fix my silo. But the real question is exactly who are the people in the silo? And I think the people in the silo are people who knew who Solo is and they knew what he did. He wants to be the last one here. He wants to feel important. And that's why he took on the role as the head of IT, even though no one gave it to him. So because of who Solo was and how he got in the silo, these people were probably other people who survived the initial outbreak of Silo 17. Just by looking at the front door of the silo, we saw that someone tried to blow up the door. The vault of Silo 17 looks very different from the vault of Silo 18. 18's vault doors look very pristine, while Silo 17's looks like someone tried to blow into it. We see the writing on the wall that they wrote for Solo, so we know someone's out to get him, and he knows that. That's why the paranoia comes in. However, because he only had a few months to live as the water levels of Silo 17 was rising, when Juliet came, he found the perfect person to do his bidding for him. It just so happens that he miscalculated and he thought he outlasted the people who he backstabbed to get in the silo in the first place. But that's just my theory. But I want to talk about the most important part of this episode, the part where we got the most revelations. Bernard's conversation with Lucas, and we learned first and foremost that they've been in the silo for over 350 years. 352 years to be exact. Which means that the rebellion that happened during the time of Salvatore Quinn, which was 140 years ago, was 210 years after they first moved into the silo, which goes to show just how advanced their society was. In this episode, when Bernard finally shows Lucas the legacy, we see that the legacy is a library containing all the knowledge of human history. And it's not your typical library. Granted, there are books in there, there are a lot of books, but the silo wouldn't have had enough room to contain all the books in human history. And that's where the technology of the silo really starts to blow my mind. Because the IT vault is not just a basic computer room. The entire room is automated, which makes a lot of sense because if we go back to episode 3, when Bernard came in with Judge Meadows, the lights kind of automatically turned on without anyone saying anything or flicking on any switches. We saw in this episode how advanced they was. The fact that Bernard vocally commanded the computer to scan Lucas and give him access. We even see their tablets are voice activated, showing that they have similar technology to what we have now. And the computer system seems to be AI automated, which makes me really wonder what happened in the before times. How did such an advanced society let itself come down to ruin? I think Salvatore Quinn's message may shed some light on that. Because now that Lucas and Bernard have figured out that the cipher for Quinn's message is the Wizard of Oz book that Judge Meadows has, they're gonna decipher the message. But what's really interesting about this message is this message was never for the head of IT. This message was for the people of the silo. That's why Salvatore Quinn didn't use a book that was in the legacy. He used a book that everyone would have access to, and he hid it in Red Level Relic, which is passed down from the Flame Keepers all the way to Juliet, which still aligns with my theory that I had last episode, that his daughter may have been the first Flame Keeper. But what this tells us about the message is that Salvatore Quinn wants the people of the silo to know this message. And I think he's in support of the rebellion because he knows something we don't know. For example, he might know where the power that's powering IT is coming from. Last episode, Solo told us that the IT department had its own power supply. And in this episode, Nox all but confirms it when he knocks out the power to the silo and only IT had power, which completely undermines Bernard. And speaking of undermining Bernard, Sims and his wife Camille are putting their plan forward. This episode finally sees Sims growing a backbone and standing up to Bernard. Even though he wanted to go crawling back to Bernard, Camille, his wife, made him put his foot down, and he finally saw how Bernard felt about him. Bernard really laid it into Sims. The fact that Bernard says he lacks imagination and therefore berated him, Sims finally realized that it's not about the law, it's about Bernard's own hubris, and he stood up to Bernard and checked them. And I have to say, Sims is a character I've never liked, but the fact that he stood up to Bernard finally made him okay in my book. Even when Bernard tried to sow division between him and his wife, Sims questioned her about her role in helping the rebels. She came clean, and together, instead of making it such a big thing, they decide to align themselves together and they're going to play both sides, which is brilliant. Bernard put Sims in a position where Sims can't lose. Sims can just sit back and watch the rebellion and the judicial fight it out, and whoever's winning just align with that side and overthrow Bernard's regime or support Bernard's regime. So now Sims, being the head of judicial, kind of has the most power because he can pretty much sway the rest of the silo. Like Sims reminded Bernard, he has so much allies and so much pull. Bernard is isolated with only Lucas on his side. Bernard is so hyper-focused on Salvatore Quinn's message, the entire silo is going to turn their back on Bernard and he's going to find himself in hot water real soon. He lost the sheriff and now Billings is actively helping Nox and Shirley, even though he hasn't aligned with them yet, but he found out about the assassination plot. Billings is focused on upholding the law, which again earns him much respect from me. You start to see how the silo could have been a better society. With someone like Billings in charge of the sheriff department, and Nox showing real leadership instead of killing and silencing the dissidents of Mechanical, like the lady who put rat poison on the food. He essentially told her they're not going to kill her, they're just going to give her hard assignments, punish her because it's not okay what she did, which is not making me think that Nox may become the new mayor of the silo. The rebellion is going to grow and more people are going to join his side because his methodology and his way of leading is very different from Bernard's. The way he does it is a way that the silo can thrive. Even when it comes to Juliet, Nox doesn't just want to open the door and send everybody outside. He wanted to send an expedition outside to go look for her, which I think should be fine because Bernard is so entrenched in the order, he can't see anything else. And while he's telling Sims that Sims lacks imagination, he's the one that's beholden to the order. He's the one that's upholding the legacy, even though he doesn't understand exactly what the legacy is. And I think Salvatore Quinn actually realized the legacy isn't all the knowledge that they have. Humanity is the legacy, which is why he sent his message out to the rest of the people in the silo and not the head of IT. Because he wants them to know that humanity itself, when outside becomes habitable again, humanity can relearn all the knowledge they had before, and it doesn't have to be the way that the order has it. Because if you follow the order to the T, you end up like Silo 17 and Solo, where there's only one person left alive. And let's be realistic, just looking at Solo by himself, he can't repopulate the earth, he can't help humanity thrive, he can't even fix the silo by himself. So if Bernard follows the order to the T, he's going to end up exactly like Solo. Everyone's going to die, he's going to be left alone, or Lucas is going to be left alone in the silo, And boom, there you have it. Humanity is gone. That's why I think Salvatore's message is the true legacy. Humanity can only persevere with humanity. But guys, that's just my thoughts about Silo episode 17. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it in the comment section below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, peace.